joined by the President and the CEO of the National Endowment for Democracy, NED, which is an organization based in the United States that was founded in 1983 for promoting democracy in other countries by promoting political and economic institutions. Damon Wilson, who is the President and the CEO, joins me live here in our studio. Thank you so much, Damon, for coming.
It's an honor to be with you.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you again.
I mean, the last time we saw in D.C., and it's quite interesting the kind of attention the world is given to the Nigerian election. And that's my first question. Why is the world interested in the Nigerian election, especially 2023 election?
This is a consequential election. First of all, it matters a lot for Nigerians. But Nigeria is the 5th largest democracy in the world. It's the largest economy, the largest country in Africa, and it's on the path to 2050 to be the 2nd largest democracy in the world. What happens here matters. It obviously matters first and foremost for Nigerians, but it could have a real impact on the pathway for democracy and democratic development in West Africa, across Africa, and frankly, around the world. We've got headwinds. Democracy is facing real challenges around the world, and a successful election here can really, I think, give some momentum to democratic renewal. So that's why we're here. That's why we're taking a look, listening and learning to the issues just a couple shortly out before the election.
There are a lot of elections on the African continent, and a lot of them are seeing new changes in the leadership of those countries. And quite interestingly, it follows some patterns also from what we've seen in other parts of the world. And also we've seen some harsh military takeover in some. Does that give you any kind of worry about the trend of these military incursion into democracy on the continent?
Well, look, there's a broader context that for about 2 decades we've been in what is known as a democratic recession. And if you look across the world, we see technically the closure of space for civic and individual rights. Democracy is in a rough patch. It's faced that same challenge here in Africa, the military coups that we've seen across the Sahel, the setback in Sudan. And yet, part of the reason why the endowment is here so invested in Nigeria, this is the largest country in the continent that is headed for what is a constructive election. This is a place that, since the '99 transition, the 7th democratic experiment, we don't have a military general running for office. We've seen peaceful transitions. We've seen term limits respected. We've seen incumbents ousted. And we have excitement among the electorate, incredible registration to vote. And I think this is a possibility building on momentum. We see what happened in Zambia, Malawi, then more recently in Kenya. And to see that followed with a constructive, positive election in Nigeria, I think it can help turn the tide on some of the setbacks we saw both in Africa and around the world and give democracy a much-needed boost.
When you said democracy is on a rough patch, it just reminded me of what happened in your country.
That's right.
Just at the exit of your former president, Donald Trump. And America seems to be, if not the biggest democracy in the world, perhaps the oldest democracy in the world, and experience that sort of thing that your parliament or the Congress has described as an invasion of democracy. What kind of lesson can Nigeria learn, or other younger democracy learn from that kind of thing? I mean, it was something that a lot of people have described as a taboo, but it happened to perhaps the oldest democracy of the world.
That's right. Look, I think it underscores clearly that democracy is not an end state. Democracy is something that puts power into the hands of people, but you got to work at it. You got to own it. You got to work at it. You got to nurture it. And so we've seen the testing of our democracy. We've seen the testing of our institutions. But if you think about American history, you know, we've had ups and downs through our democratic journey. It's not been a smooth past, and so we shouldn't romanticize the past. What it does underscore is a sense of humility, that we all have to really own and invest in the democratic health and vibrancy of our own society. It also really reinforces the approach of the endowment. The endowment comes to support the democratic pathway here with humility. This is your country. This is your election. We're not here to tell any country what to do, and certainly Nigerians what to do. We're here to listen and to support Nigerians that are doing courageous things to help advance the cause. And I think that humility is something that Certainly, the United States, Americans have learned through our own experience and have shown that we can't take anything for granted. You've got to work at sustaining and making a democracy healthy, and that's what we see incredible numbers of civil society organizations, engaged youth and activists. That's what they're doing. Things are not perfect in this democracy, but we see people working to make this democracy be more effective, more representative, and that's encouraging.
It's interesting that those who were born in 1998, when we returned to democracy in 1999, that is, by now they're planning to probably take part in their first election actively as a voter. So they are 18 and above now, so they might be able to participate in the election. So it's some encouragement that things we're growing. But if you look at it, not even America can boast that it doesn't have it doesn't have those kind of factors that have shaped our democracy or our elections here in Nigeria. The issue of ethnicity and religion in American elections, you see that happening. You say, oh, these are the whites, the blacks, and how the women and the these and the that, the determining the election. You saw what happened in 2016, the election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. That also played out, how some religious beliefs also voted in those kind of direction. And you saw also where America was very worried about the so-called influence of Russia and foreign governments or foreign bodies on their democracy. These are issues also, misinformation, fake news, on how those impacted on our democracy. If you put all of those together and you look at it holistically, what lesson do you think Nigerians who are watching now should take from those experiences? A very tough one, isn't it?
It is. I mean, look, we've got a difficult electoral environment everywhere because we've seen a surge of populism in countries around the world, a big reaction to the challenges of poverty and lack of economic growth in societies. And unfortunately, we've seen the intervention of a country like Russia, authoritarian states that have tried to manipulate, as we saw in my own country. But I think, again, it underscores the power of what a democracy is. And ultimately, in a free society, you don't need outsiders to tell you the problems. A free society is where people hold leaders to account, where they get to identify strengths and weaknesses. And it's the self-correcting process of a democracy, of an election, in which a people's sovereignty is determined by their voice and their vote to identify what they want to change, take it into their own hands by turning out to vote, holding leaders accountable, and by that, they're helping to become stronger. So elections are always messy because you're going to talk about what you don't like. You're going to talk about the shortcomings. And yet this is how democracies heal and get stronger. And so that's one of the things I'm really impressed by since I've been here. We met with INEC today, and we heard about, since the new registration with the PVCs, you know, over 70% of the new registrants are under the age of 34. There is an incredible energy of young people in this society who are going to shape the future if they get their voting cards, they turn out and vote, and the things that frustrate them, whether it's poverty, lack of growth or opportunity, or jobs, these are things they can actually hold leaders to account for. And I think you see Nigerians learning from their own experience. You see civil society much more sophisticated, much more engaged in supporting the electoral process this time around. And Nigeria's democratic experiment is going to be better for that.
Some say it's a make or mar for Nigeria, this election. Do you think so?
Look, it's no doubt it's a consequential election. It's hard to see how an election in the country this size isn't always an important one. But you do feel something here. It's a tough moment. There's security issues out there. There's issues of real challenge around poverty and governance. There's a really healthy debate. So yes, all of our societies have divisions and ethnic cleavages and religious issues. And in American democracy, you see that. It has a particular color here. But the truth is you're also hearing discussion of issues. We've met with organizations in Lagos. The organized private sector has laid out an agenda for economic reform and growth to tackle poverty and support entrepreneurship. We've met with women, people with disabilities, the youth groups that have put together a GAIN agenda that is laying out an agenda for inclusion. And so despite a lot of the noise, a lot of the friction, and you're going to have that in an open democracy, you see people demanding answers on issues that matter to them, forcing candidates to go on the record, to speak to issues that matter to the people, having debates among the candidates where they have to defend their records. And this is how you give people an informed choice, getting leaders on the record, being able to hold them to account once they're elected. And that's a pretty remarkable evolution. I think right now it matters for Nigeria because you've seen the greatest growth of those in poverty around the world has been concentrated and driven by the growth of poverty in Nigeria. That has to be a clear and present urgent issue for any new administration combined with the security challenge. And so this is a really consequential moment for the country, and that's what we've heard from all of our Nigerian partners.
We are so drenched in the preparations and thinking. The anticipation is so, you can feel it. It's so thick, and you can, I mean, every Nigerian is thinking about the 25th of February. But I mean, you coming into Nigeria, and this is your first time, as the president of NED, coming to Nigeria to see what things are looking at like ahead of the election. But let me ask you, if there is something that you see that you think Nigerians and Nigeria and INEC should be weary of going into this election, what would that be?
You know, look, I think for the people, the voters, the biggest thing that they can do is control their ability to vote and to turn out. We saw Nigerians were, what I've heard from Nigerians is they were disappointed in turnout in the last presidential election. This is an opportunity for the people to show that they run the country by turning out in large numbers. We feel and see a lot of that enthusiasm, whether it's in rallies or registration, and I think that's a big issue of importance. I think part of what I've been really impressed by is how seriously INEC is taking the Herculean task of running this and respecting the integrity and legitimacy and capability of INEC. There will be a lot of pressure, and to have a strong independent electoral authority that's empowered with a new electoral reform, that's backed by new technologies, that has the support of the people to be able to help this country navigate a fraught time with a steady hand on a credible election. And I think the legitimacy and credibility of INEC, the turnout of the people, these are the best guarantees of all the challenges that are on the docket.
Well, if you come to Nigeria, this is perhaps where you find a country that has a vibrant youth population. And you can't come to Nigeria and not learn one or two things. If there's one story that you go back home to tell, what would that story be?
Well, first, let me say, in the midst of all the challenges, the concerns, and issues, the warmth, the generosity, the enthusiasm of the Nigerian people, it is inspiring. It's at the heart of their resilience, and it's at the heart of why I'm confident about their democratic experiment here, because there is a democratic resilience that has overcome great challenges. The other thing I've learned is that you don't want fair weather friends. Things don't happen overnight. The National Endowment for Democracy is proud that we have been supporting Nigerian civil society and activists since before 1999, supporting those who help lead the change. But we understand that many donors come and go with election cycles or have their own priorities. It's just not our approach. We believe in Nigerian ideas, Nigerian struggle. It's why this is my first visit to Africa as NED president, to underscore the importance of backing Nigeria's leadership here at home, across the continent, and to build on that tradition.
Damon, and this is how we close the conversation with you. I'd like to ask you, on this election, you look at the front running. I mean, because I know you've had a deep study about
That's right.
those who are in the front running. What should Nigerians be looking at? If there is something that you like to say, based on what you're seeing about the front runners in the race for the presidency, what should Nigerians be voting for?
Look, I'm not here to tell what Nigerians should be voting for. what I hear from Nigerians, two big concerns are how do we have security so that our families are safe, we can go to our jobs, we can worship in peace, we can help build the country, and that's a real big issue that impacts everything. And the second one are people who want good paying jobs based on meritocracy with economic growth that rewards entrepreneurship. And this combination of helping to ensure security for the people, the citizens of this country, and providing economic opportunity, growth for this economy to pull people out of poverty, this is an incredible agenda of governance.
Yeah.
And so what we hear, Nigerians want to see a leader, a team that can come in and can deliver on these big agenda items. And that's exciting to see the people demand that accountability.
I guess you'll be back for the election. I'll be looking forward to that, Damon.
We are delighted to have Ned here with IRI and NDI and so many others back. This is going to be a moment to really support and celebrate.
It's good to see you guys when you support us for some of these things and watch our democracy grow too. And we're proud for what we are doing for ourselves. Thank you so much.
It's impressive. Thank you for having me on the show.
Damon Wilson is the president and the CEO of the National Endowment for Democracy based in the United States. Thank you so much, Damon, for joining us tonight.